Hello and welcome to the OnStage Colorado podcast. I'm your host, Alex Miller, and today we're talking to Bernie Cardell, Artistic Director of the Vintage Theater in Aurora. We'll get to that interview in just a moment. So we're deep into the January theater season now, and lots of new shows going on around the state. The OnStage Colorado review crew has been busy out at the theaters, and we have new reviews on the site for a terrific show at Denver's Curious Theater called The Secretary, and that's from our new reviewer, John Barnett, as well as Lane Ware's take on A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Forum by Performance Now, playing at the Lakewood Cultural Center, and incidentally, directed by our guest today, Bernie Cardell. I reviewed Family Theater Company's fabulous production of Honk, playing at Aurora Fox, and Blythe Smith got to check out Disenchanted at Littleton Town Hall. Coming up soon, we'll have write-ups of The Squirrels at the Aurora Fox. That one marks Missy Moore's return to Colorado as director. And I'm taking my granddaughter, Caitlin, to see Matilda at the Pace Center in Parker, so we'll have her take along with mine. Another new reviewer joins the team this month from Summit County, my old friend Karen Mason. She'll get out to see The Great Gatsby at the Breckenridge Backstage Theater. And up in Fort Collins, Carrie Redmond will be checking out Open Stage's production of Men on Boats at the Lincoln Center, and also The Best Brothers at Bob Blue. Down in Colorado Springs, April Took will get to Small Mouth Sounds at the UCCS ENT Center, as well as Lend Me a Tenor at the Funky Little Theater. And in Boulder coming up, Amy Drugan will cover Stephen Dietz's play Bloomsday at Boulder Ensemble Theater Company. I'm also trying to get him on the podcast. He's an interesting guy who's known as one of the most produced playwrights in America and also a Colorado native. So there's a lot coming up, so check it all out on the site at onstagecolorado.com. So our guest today is Bernie Cardell, Artistic Director at the Vintage Theater. This is a theater that's known not only for its high-quality productions, but the sheer volume of plays and musicals they do over the course of the year in their two theaters. Now in its 20th season, Bernie talks about the theater's beginning, as well as offers some thoughts about the role live theater can play in our distracted, screen-driven world. Okay, here's my interview with Bernie Cardell. All right, well, here we are with Bernie Cardell at Vintage Theater. Bernie, thanks so much for being on the OnStage Colorado podcast today.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I really appreciate it. And I wanted to talk to you about, the upcoming season, or just we've already started the season here at Vintage. And boy, it's quite a lineup.
It is like quite a packed lineup. That's really the way we like it here.
Yeah, so we'll get to that in just a minute. First, I wanted to just ask a little bit about your background and your history, and like how you got into the whole acting and directing. I'm assuming you started as an actor, like a lot of people.
I did start out as an actor. But I didn't discover it until after, I wasn't involved with it in high school. I wasn't involved with it in college, and I discovered acting when I moved to Colorado in 2001 and took an acting class, and that just led to one thing after another.
Okay. And so what was like one of your first roles in Colorado?
The very first role I had in Colorado, I played Reverend Paris in a production of The Crucible at the Upstart Crow.
Okay.
And I never did another drama after that.
So you like comedies?
Oh, I prefer comedy, yeah. And I don't mind dramas, but it's just funny how it's worked out that way. Just one comedy after another.
Uh-huh. So you didn't go to have an MFA or anything like that? You kind of came to it a little later in life?
I came to it a little bit later. I mean, I say later, but I was like 28 or something. Right. So it wasn't that late, but I didn't, I never studied theater. I never, took any, I took some classes at the Arvada Center and the Denver Center and that sort of thing. And so it was just something that I found later and that I really, really loved.
Uh-huh. Yeah. And so, so after you did I'm assuming quite a number of roles, and were you acting full time, or was that a side thing for you?
No, I always had a day job as well, so I was always acting on the side and just doing as much as I could around that day job.
Uh-huh. And then when did you first kind of take up directing?
It was a couple of years later. I would say 2004. I was just in the right place at the right time. Somebody had dropped out of directing a show at a theater, and I was just standing in the lobby talking to someone, and the artistic director said, "Hey, do you direct?" And I said, "Sure." And so I did. And then I discovered that I kind of like that too.
Okay. Yeah. There are people that, that they're actors that are like, I never want to direct. No, thank you very much.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I would never want to stage manage. That would be the thing I would never want to do, because it's such a terribly difficult job. And God bless the fabulous stage managers that we have in this city. But acting, I go between acting and directing. I definitely direct a lot more than I act now. It was when I started, it was more acting and then a little bit of directing, and now it's more directing and a little bit of acting.
So let's talk a little bit about your path to the Vintage. When did you first get involved with this theater?
The Craig Bond, who is one of the founders of Vintage Theater, approached me sometime in 2007 and asked me to come aboard and work with Vintage and direct some shows. And at that time, I was a co-artistic director. Craig and I were both kind of co-artistic directors, selecting the shows and helping to manage the company. And then after, let's see, I want to say 2012, maybe 11, I left Vintage to manage Spotlight Theater Company.
Okay.
And then once again, Craig called me in 2016 and asked me to come back as just the artistic director, because at that time he was doing both. He was both the executive director and the artistic director. So he had asked me to come back as the artistic director, and then he would just be the executive director. So then now I've been here since then. And then in the time that I wasn't kind of on staff at Vintage, I was still directing here as a guest director. So, I've been involved off and on with Vintage since 2008.
Okay. And what is the history of this theater? How many years has it been?
Well, 2020 is our 20th season. So 20 years. For a long time, Vintage was a nomadic company. They didn't have a space. And then they worked a lot at the Phoenix Theater when that was around. And then we moved into the space at 17th and Vine, and that was in 2008. And that was their first full-time kind of space. So we had our first full season in that space. And then we moved out of there in 2011 or 12 to come over here. And so we've been here ever since then.
Okay, so not that long. And what was this building before?
Well, before we were here, it was empty for a little bit. There were a couple of theater companies that had produced some shows here. But before that, it was the Shadow Theater Company that lived here for a number of years that, Jeffrey Nicholson was the artistic director for. And so that's why our main stage theater is called the Nicholson Auditorium.
Okay, so it seems like it was obviously built as a theater.
I think I don't know what it was built as, but it's been a number of things. It was an auto parts store at one point. It was a workout, a gym at some point, and something else I forget. I've heard there's a swimming pool under the lobby.
Really?
I'd love to find out someday.
Right, there's Nazi gold somewhere, probably.
Exactly. Right? So I really don't know what the building started out as, because I don't think they built it as a theater.
Okay, well, it almost looks that way.
It was really Jeffrey Nicholson and Shadow Theater that came in and built the space out, this main stage, the big stage that we have. And the little stage was not a theater until we moved in and we built that space out.
So right now it's a wonderful space, and every theater's dream, I think, to have a larger auditorium and then a smaller black box. Yeah,
this is any producer's dream to first of all have your own space, and second of all have two different performing spaces, and actually three with the cabaret, because we do cabarets in the lobby, almost every week.
So let's talk a little bit about the Vintage, and it does an extraordinary number of shows. We talked about the two theaters, the Nicholson and the smaller Bond Trimble Theater, plus the cabaret. How do you keep all that going? That's a lot of balls to juggle.
It's pretty difficult. We have a number of part-time staff, people that assist us. Obviously, we have a wonderful staff, and Craig and I, kind of manage the big picture while the staff helps us with the kind of granular day-to-day things going on, because I still have to work around my day job to make all that happen.
Okay.
And Craig does too. He has a day job as most of us do.
Yes.
We have to work our day jobs around our theater habit,
Right. That's great. So when did you so I was just looking at the list of shows. So you started off in the new year with Frost Nixon in the smaller theater, and I think I counted like a dozen shows.
It's 12. It is 12. Well, Angels in America is 2 parts, so I guess I count that as 2 productions. So if you do it that way, it's 12 shows this year.
Yeah, I would count that twice.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And then the cabaret, did that come along later, or has that been?
No, it came along later. I mean, we had the space in the lobby, and nothing was happening with it. And I just wanted to get I wanted to have something going on. I didn't know what it would be, though. And then Michael O'Shea came to me and said, we should do a cabaret. Let's just try it out. And we did a couple of events, and people came to see it on a Wednesday or Thursday night when normally there's, just rehearsals going on in this space. So it was great to have just more activity going on here and to give artists the chance to kind of showcase their talents. They get to put together a cabaret evening and invite people, and they get to keep 70% of the ticket sales for themselves. So it's turned into this great program. And we have such a variety of performers and types of evenings that we do now, and it's really growing.
That's great. And does that attract a little more of a local Aurora audience, or does that pull from?
They really come from all over, and I think it also depends on who the performer is, because they also, a lot of times the performer will pull from their fan base, I guess, and then we have subscribers that will want to come see it and come see a particular, cabaret. So they're really, it's really from all over.
Yeah, it's interesting that there's so much theater going on in this. You got the Aurora Fox right around the block.
Oh, absolutely, it's wonderful.
Yeah, and I don't think I would come to Aurora very often otherwise, just because I live kind of far from here.
Oh, sure, yeah, but we have subscribers and just regular customers, in fact, that come from Boulder and they come from everywhere just to see theater here.
So let's talk a little bit more about the current season. Yeah. So you've got Frost Nixon. I just was we just were looking at the first read through of the Scottsboro Boys. Right. Yeah, that Betty is directing.
Betty Hart is directing. Absolutely.
Right. So is that the next one up?
That is the next show that opens. They open February 7th.
Okay.
Whatever that Friday is. Yeah, I think it's 7th.
Okay. And when you worked on picking the season, was there any kind of thematic thing to it, or is it?
I never work with a theme. I tried that in the past, and it just never kind of works out well. And sometimes you have shows that fit the theme but don't really fit your aesthetic, or fit you don't really love the show, but it fits the theme really well. So I never work with a theme. I pick a season. I pick a season that I think I would, if I saw that season at another theater, I would buy a season ticket. Will this season make me buy a season ticket at another theater? So that's my kind of baseline way to start out. And I also want shows that have not been done at all here in the Denver area, or stuff that has not been done in some time, so that we can introduce our audiences. I think our audiences know that they're going to get something that they won't see just everywhere.
And you've got 2 theaters, so you probably think of big shows and small shows.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Our bigger musicals, obviously, in the bigger space. And then that allows me to take a risk maybe on something in the smaller space, something that may not be as well known, or is just something really different.
And what are some examples of those that you're doing in the small space this season?
Sure. We've got Fireflies coming up, opening May 1st. That is a romantic comedy for people of a certain age.
Okay.
And it'll be starring Deb Persoff. No one's ever heard of it. It's a regional premiere. It's never been done here. Sometimes people want to see something they've heard of, or a product that they know. So my hope is that we're training audiences that they don't always have to know what it is exactly that they're going to be seeing, but that they're coming for a quality product, at Vintage. And then after that, let's see. I'm trying to think what the Last Night of Ballyhoo, I don't think a ton of people know about. They've heard of Driving Miss Daisy, which is the same author, but Ballyhoo hasn't been done in this town in some time.
Yeah, I saw it at the Denver Center in the 90s.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. The Fox did it, I think 15 or 18 years ago, or whatever it was. So it just hasn't been done a lot, and I think it's a great show for the holidays.
Yeah, that is a good. I don't remember anything about what it's about, except I thought it was like Jews in the South.
Yeah, and they have a Christmas tree, and but they're all concerned about who's going to the big social event of the year, which is called Ballyhoo, and Gone with the Wind is having its premiere in Atlanta at the same time as Hitler is invading Poland. So we've got all sorts of things going on in that script, which are and Steve Wilson's going to be coming in to direct that for us, which is really exciting for me.
Okay. And I'm sorry, I don't know Steve Wilson.
Steve Wilson runs the JCC, the Jewish Community Center.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
And he's directed for years for Family and for other places.
Great. And any other like standouts? I mean, of course, you probably think they're all great.
Well, I think they're all fabulous. Yes. I'm so excited about the Scottsboro Boys because I had tried to get the rights to that to be able to present it for a number of years, and they just kept saying, no, we're not going to release the rights yet. We're not going to release the rights yet. And they finally did. And I think that's a show that not a lot of theaters would produce. And I think it's such a great piece. But it's in our bigger space. It's a risky piece for us. Nobody has heard of it. And actually, not a lot of people know about the actual history of the Scottsboro Boys. So it's an interesting educational lesson for people.
Right. Yeah. Okay. And I think that you're closing out with like Matilda the musical.
Matilda the musical, which I love. I saw it in New York. Crazy talented kids. It's real dull, so it's got that kind of offbeat, dark humor of his, that we all know from Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory and other things. It's just a great piece. I think it's great for the holidays. It's something the whole family can come in and enjoy. That's not a Christmas Carol or something a little more standard.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Not that there's anything wrong with A Christmas Carol because people do that show and we love A Christmas Carol. I'm not putting anyone down for doing A Christmas Carol.
No, not at all. I mean, but if lots of theaters are doing it, it's certainly the occasion to do something else.
Yeah, and that's kind of been one of my philosophies that if a lot of people are doing something, then it's not something that I want to do. I want to do I want people to be able to see some different shows here. Much like the Aurora Fox is doing. I mean, they do shows that are they might all be. In fact, I'm sure they're all premieres of some kind, either regional or world premieres. Even I hadn't heard of most of the stuff when they announced it. And I was like, it's so exciting to have them right next door to us because we have different sensibilities, but both producing quality work and just stuff that you either haven't seen or have never seen.
OnStage Colorado is the state's best place to find information about live theater. Our website at onstagecolorado.com has the most comprehensive calendar for live performances, not just in the metro area, but all around Colorado. That means you can find shows from Boulder to Breckenridge, Denver to Durango, and everywhere in between. Also, the OnStage Colorado review crew gets out to see many of the shows going on around the state. So if you'd like to know more about a show before you buy tickets, chances are we've got a review of it online you can read first. To keep on top of it all, subscribe to our weekly newsletter on the site. It comes out every Thursday and has the latest reviews, podcasts, and also a lineup of new shows opening around Colorado. Find it all on onstagecolorado.com. Be sure to subscribe to the OnStage Colorado podcast wherever you listen to your podcasts. You can find it on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, and many other podcast platforms. Yeah, thinking about theaters and kind of what they're doing and like sort of the scene in Colorado, I was just going to ask you your thoughts about, since you've been around for a little while here.
Right.
And the theater scene in Colorado has really, I don't know, I think it's really heated up.
Oh, it's incredibly vibrant. Yeah, absolutely.
And so, and there's even been some theaters starting, in the last year or two, theater companies. I
think there are theater companies that start every year, in fact.
Right. So from your wise old perch as the artistic director, what advice would you give to a newer theater starting up?
I would say to focus on the patron experience. Every new theater that wants to start up is either a group of people that love each other so much they want to just work together and produce great work. Or it's a smaller group of people that says, well, nobody is filling this need currently in our current theater scene, and we want to produce work like that. And I say it doesn't matter what you're producing. If you're not focusing on the patron experience and the level of quality in your work, then you won't be around long. And that's why we've had a number of theaters come and go over the years, but also a number of theaters that have been here for a very long time.
So pay attention to your audience, I guess.
Pay attention. Always pay attention and ask them and talk to them. Survey them. Talk to them at the performance. What do they think? Will they come back? Are they happy?
And do you do that kind of audience survey now still?
We absolutely do. After every performance, a survey goes out Tell us what you thought of the show, but also just as important, what did you think of the service that you received? How is the facility? Does the facility alone meet your needs as a theater goer? And my personal philosophy has always been to make it feel like home for not only for our patrons, but also for our actors and our designers and our directors and all the people that work here and our bartenders. So I want it to feel like home to everybody.
Right. Yeah. One of the things this is one of the theaters I like to come to a little early because I know I can go and get a martini at the bar. And
absolutely. We have this incredible bar and this huge lobby, and you can just come and drink and have a seat and visit with your friends before the show, before you go into the theater. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a scene. There's a scene.
There's a whole scene. Exactly.
So I was thinking a little bit about just talking kind of about in theater in general and how, your competition may not necessarily be other theaters, but it might be like, this highly distracted audience. It's Netflix. It's, it's a football game. It's whatever.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, I would never say another theater is our competition. I think anybody that's producing theater is also promoting live theater.
And so what is, in your opinion, something that live theater gives that those screens just don't?
I think there are two things come to mind immediately. One is that you come to live theater to have a visceral experience. Obviously, a Netflix movie or an Amazon series can make you feel something, but there is something about being in the theater and feeling something along with 100 other people in the room that creates this kind of magnification of feeling and promotes a feeling of community within the audience and a shared sense of community between the audience and the actors on stage. So that's something that there's no way to get that from watching something on a screen. The other thing is empathy. And again, you could get that from watching something on television, but again, there's something about having that experience live in person with another actor, and again, along with other audience members that are next to you, that teaches people and conditions people to have more empathy.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's, like you said, visceral. It's real. It's right in front of you.
It is right in front of you. And if you're in our small space, it's literally inches from you.
Yeah. They can trip over you if you put your...
Exactly. Yes. That has actually happened.
So, I sometimes think about, people reacting against, you hear so much about people are on screens too much. They're on their phone. They're on their computer. Mm-hmm. And I wonder if there'll be a kind of anti-reaction to that in the future where people are just really seeking things like Absolutely. Live theater.
I think I've been thinking about that for some time. I think there's going to be a Facebook backlash at some point. And I think Facebook is great, because I can connect with all of my family members and talk to people about the shows that I'm doing. And I love that. But I also think that as people spend more and more time on their devices, eventually there's going to be that growing sense of, there's going to be a growing need for the human connection that they can only get with something like a live theater experience. So, yeah. It's gonna make a comeback. I'm telling you.
Yeah, I mean, it almost sounds like something theaters should market. Put your phone down and come see live.
The original 3D.
That's right. I thought about that also with fraternal organizations, the Elks Lodge. Could they, if they could market that, come out and get a cheap drink.
Yeah, get a cheap drink and just connect with other people.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm totally with you on that.
One of the other things about theater that I know everybody who's trying to keep a theater going is concerned about is the sort of the graying of the audience. So how do you get young people more engaged?
First of all, you have either you have to have some sort of youth program in your theater, or you have to promote a youth program in someone else's theater, or we have to continually be training the next generation of artists, but not only the next generation of actors and designers and directors, but also the next generation of theater goers. Right. So we do a couple of things here at Vintage where we have a summer camp that kids can come in and put together a show in a 3-week span of time. But we also have a program where we have people that will go out to schools and just do a little theater education hour with the students. We also have an after-school program on certain days where kids can come here to the theater and play theater games, and just, again, teaching them empathy and connection and being around other humans and not just on their devices. So that's definitely one of the ways we can encourage the next generation of theater goers and ticket buyers, but also I guess community outreach, just being in the community and producing shows that your community wants to see.
Right. I mean, when you think about millennials, you're thinking these are people that, they don't even want to buy, HBO. They share the password. Right. They're kind of used to getting a lot of their content for,
Maybe we should start charging a monthly fee for Vintage instead of a ticket price per,
I wonder, we think about, those people, and it's like, they want, what, $35 for a ticket? I can go to the movies for this or that, but they have to see the value. It's like, how do you convince them of that value? And I think you answered it. It's educating them earlier on.
But it's definitely a really good question, and it's a question that all theaters right now are facing everywhere. How do we capture that 20-something market, 20 and 30-something, frankly, that market as well. But it's if I can get them here for one experience of connection, I think they're going to want more of it.
So I actually gave you a heads up. So I was going to ask you one last thing about recommending, and I was thinking about reading plays and how a lot of people don't read plays. And I was talking to Wendy Ishii at Bob Lou, and I asked her the same question. And I thought maybe I'll just ask everybody this, because what are a couple of plays that you would suggest people read and plays that they may not see produced?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I of course have been thinking about this since you had written that email. The first one that comes to mind is a play by David Lindsay Abair called Good People. The second one is a play called That Championship Season by Jason Miller. And now I'm trying to think what my third choice was. I would say When You Coming Back, Red Rider by Mark Medoff.
And what about that play do you think is interesting?
I love I love anything that has to do with relationships, and when relationships get strained and how people deal with that and how they come out the other side, either still together or apart. And that's a play about a hostage situation in a small diner that I think is just a fascinating slice of America put under pressure.
Right.
That's what's fascinating to me about that.
Okay. And That Championship Season, that almost sounds like was that a film?
It was a film. It's I want to say it's 1978. It won the Pulitzer Prize that year. The play did. And then the film came out in, I think, 1980 maybe, with an all-star cast like Robert Mitchum, and I think Stacy Keach was in it, and Martin Sheen. It's a great, back then we didn't have the term toxic masculinity, but there is something about this play, That Championship Season, that deals with that. That some of these, it's about a basketball team, about 5 guys that were on a basketball team that had won the high school championship, and they get together to kind of celebrate the memories and the anniversary of their win, along with their coach, and the way men relate to each other. And of course, in that time period, it was a lot more difficult because men didn't really have a way to relate to each other emotionally. So I just think it's a fascinating play.
Okay. And what was that first one you mentioned?
The first one is a play called Good People. It's by David Lindsay Abair, whom he's a playwright that I just love. I love all of his work. We've done Kimberly Akimbo at Vintage, as well as Rabbit Hole, which was another play that I loved. But Good People is the only place I've seen produce it was, I think, Curious, maybe about 10 years ago. I don't remember. But it's a play with themes of race, class, aging, all done with David Lindsay Abair's kind of signature absurdist comedy. And I think it's a fascinating play.
Okay. Well, those are 3 great recommendations. So
yeah,
go read those plays.
Read any plays. Yeah. Go see plays and read plays.
All right. Well, Bernie Cardell, artistic director at Vintage Theater, has got a really exciting season coming up. So strongly suggest you come out here and get here a little early and check out the bar. There's always usually 2 bartenders. Yeah.
Have a glass of wine. And
all right. Well, thanks a lot, Bernie.
Yeah. Thank you.
All right. Well, great Great stuff. And thanks to Bernie for taking time out of his busy schedule to talk with us. The Vintage has Frost Nixon up right now in their small theater through February 9th. And as he noted, the great Betty Hart is directing a production of The Scottsboro Boys that starts February 7th in their larger auditorium. Thanks for listening to the OnStage Colorado podcast. If you're looking for shows, showtimes, reviews, and more, be sure to look on the OnStage Colorado website. We'll be back with a new podcast in a week or two. So until then, we'll see you at the theater.